In Between Fantasy Football Podcast, Season 4. Let's go, baby. Yeah. There was a time I had trouble talking about it. Congratulate them, we know they doubted. Somehow we made it up out the pit, back against the wall, never quit. Traversing through each obstacle, show a non-believer what's possible. Let nothing they could do stand in between me and my wildest dreams. Let's go. Nothing that come at us could come in between. Life gave me the worst, yet my side grew so green. We've been down in the dirt, been tossed in the trash, but I never strayed from my path. When we're gone, we ain't looking back.
Maybe we were all way too high. Maybe that's our fault.
It's going to be a crazy time, but it's going to be a fun time.
Life is boring if you don't take some chances and do some things outside the box.
Your destination for both some feel-good lifestyle advice and some fantasy football advice.
All right. It is Tuesday, December 13th, week number 15 of the NFL season. And yes, it is time for the fantasy football playoffs, where the fortunate will reign supreme and the less fortunate, they will head home and try again next season. As a woman once said very eagerly and weirdly in the Hunger Games, may the odds be ever in your favor as we enter this time, folks. Seth Woolcock back with you. As you can tell, if you're in our YouTube audience, I'm not in my usual studio. Right now, I'm in the attic of my best friend's house. I'm back home taking care of some business this week. Appreciate Udo renting out the attic for a studio tonight for me. I'm joined by my guys, Scott Rynier, Sleepless in Seattle. And I'm also joined by a man who enjoyed some whiskey on Saturday night at the Between the Holidays party. That's my guy, Nate Polvo. Gentlemen, you are looking good. You are looking trim. How are we as we enter the fantasy football playoffs?
You know, I've actually been kind of on a diet where I'm just eating a ton of quinoa. I'm losing weight. It's been the weirdest thing. So thanks for noticing, Seth. I appreciate it. Looking trim and got a nice little cleanup on my – trying to grow my beard out because it's cold. So we'll see how that goes.
There we go. Scott, you're looking trim over there too. I think your girls are keeping you active and youthful.
Yeah, the scale might say differently, but I'm definitely not eating any quinoa. That's for sure. Yeah, I'm good, man. The season playoffs are here. I'm tired, but I'm excited. Like it's go time now. It's supposed to be next week. We might hit a record low in Seattle. It's supposed to be next Thursday. It's supposed to get down to like almost 0 degrees, which I don't think I've ever seen. So looking forward to that.
Ooh,
Okay.
wow.
Okay. Yeah, guys, this is go time, honestly. This is why we prepare 365 days a year for this time, week 15, 16, 17, and 18 if you're in one of those weirder leagues as well. Whatever is your cup of tea. Tonight on the show, guys, we are going to get you set. We're going to talk injuries and news, how we can pivot from the week 14 fallout. We're also going to do temperature check and do a playoff trust meter. Can we trust these once studs as we move into the fantasy football playoffs? And then we'll get some in the scope going, waivers, free agent fines. Who can we get you guys on the cheap? Last week, I threw out Chuba Hubbard. I said, go get him after waivers. He came through big here in week 14. I had to play him a couple places, and he's looking like one of the top ads this week. So we'll try to get you ahead of waivers here later in the show. And then we're going to round it out with some weekly advice, tell a couple stories, some advice on how to lose graciously. It's one of the hardest things to do, especially when you're like us and you go all in on fantasy football. How do we lose properly? We're going to tell you that. I do want to welcome in the In Between Media family before we get too far into the show. Looks like we got Albert in the chat. Good to see you, Albert. Good afternoon. Good evening. We got Toronto Dave saying Seth looking fly as hell. Hey, we appreciate that, baby. He's also saying shout out Chuba Hubbard. Hell yeah, man. And we got Brad Bolt tuning in all the way from Australia. We got some diversity in our audience tonight already. Love it. And we got Didi cooking at the lake house saying hello, boys. We appreciate you, Didi. It was great to see you on the holiday show cooking it up with Sven. That looked like some pretty good carbonara they made up, didn't it, Nate?
Yeah, no, it made me hungry, which was awful because I couldn't go eat. But yeah, that was a fantastic segment. I love that we had that element to our holiday show.
I completely agree. It was a blast. If you guys are new to the In Between family, please subscribe if you like this type of content. We combine feel-good lifestyle advice with fantasy sports advice. And if you guys have hung around with us all season, thank you guys so much. We greatly appreciate it. Looks like we got Lucius back in the chat already. Give a thumbs up to this video, guys. Help spread the love and the joy of IBT media around. And with all that said, guys, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's get locked and loaded with some front and center.
Sometimes taking that first step out the door is the hardest thing to do. Give it a chance, you'll be begging for more. Save the spot just for you. We're all somewhere in between. How about you come to the place we can have some fun? Ain't gotta worry about knowing not what it means. You can come and give me another, cause the night is young. At least I so thought.
This just in. Breaking news. Front and center.
All right, front and center. Here we go, guys. Before we jump in to give you the latest news and injury analysis, I want to first start with this question from Lucius, and I know we'll touch on this a little bit later in the show, but Lucius is saying, evening, guys, currently in the playoffs and have the Pats defense. Time to drop, question mark. Their schedule moving forward is really rough. Options would be Green Bay, Carolina, Saints. Thanks as usual. And I'll be honest, guys. I just went and picked up some skis. I bought some skis for a Christmas gift for somebody, and I was at one of my old teacher's houses who happened to be selling them on Facebook Marketplace. Like I said, back in the hometown, and he said, "Hey, before you go, can I get some advice?" And he asked me this very question. He has Patriots D, he has Bills D. Should he move off one of those and pick up one of these other defenses out here? He's throwing out Green Bay, Carolina, and the Saints here, Nate. How do you feel about it? Green Bay with an excellent matchup this week. I like them a lot this week. I'm going to talk about the Panthers defense a little bit more later on, but they have a better end of season schedule, I think, than the Panthers do.
The way Carolina's defense has played lately, I would probably go after Carolina out of this list. I mean, Green Bay's got a good matchup this week, but that defense hasn't been that good. They haven't been consistently good.
Yeah, and Carolina, I mean, they get Pitt this week.
Yeah.
So whether that's Pickett, whether it's Trubisky, it's a pretty good matchup. So
could it be Mason Rudolph?
I would play Carolina over over New England. It's tough with defenses because New England's been really good all season long, but you're at a point where it's, depending on your format, it's if you lose, you go home.
Yeah.
So I mean, Green Bay does have a good matchup with the Rams this week, as does Carolina with Pitt. But both those teams, Green Bay and Carolina, then their matchups get tough. So it's a jigsaw puzzle this time of year, but it's fun.
I think you can play Carolina week 17 against the Buccaneers. I like that matchup. Mm-hmm. I don't like their week 16 matchup, though. However, the Packers, you can get them this week against the Rams. However, there is some Baker Mayfield magic in the air right now out there in Los Angeles. And then they have the Dolphins, Vikings. So it really would be a 1-week rental for the Packers. With this all being said, guys, I'm going with the Carolina Panthers in this option. I'm okay to drop New England here. Final answer for you, Scott. Who would you pick out of this three? And are you dropping New England for any of them?
Well, I mean, I just looked at it and not to throw a wrench into it, but I mean, New England gets Vegas this week. That's not a terrible matchup either for what's shown to be a really good fantasy defense. So I don't know if I'd be so quick, but I mean, after that they get the Bengals and the Dolphins. So that's tough. But I'm probably going with Carolina. I think their defense is playing better than the Packers. So if both Carolina and the Packers are facing the thing is you're probably going to be faced with a situation where you don't get to play against a really sweet matchup every single week. So if that's the case, I think the Panthers defense has been playing better, and I'd go with them.
And we might have Mitch Trubisky out there for the Steelers as well, Nate, who some of those picks weren't his fault. I was listening to Big Ben's podcast this week, and it sounded like some of those were not on him. So I understand that, but still, Mitch Trubisky, he's a matchup in heaven right now, I think, for the Carolina defense.
Well, and if you didn't hear today, Mike Tomlin wouldn't commit to Trubisky as a starter, even if Pickett is out this week, which means there's a chance we might get Mason Rudolph over Mitch Trubisky. So, right, it could go from really good to even better for the Carolina defense.
Awesome question there. Dee Dee saying Carolina all the way, showing some support for her Charlotte team down there. I want to bring up the first headline here, guys, and it's Kyler Murray believes to have suffered a torn ACL last night. Really ugly game for injuries, and it was played on grass, so it was kind of surprising to see that. Really sad to see this for Kyler Murray. I'm not a big Kyler Murray fan. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought he was we said it last week, a playoff landmine. However, I don't wish for this on anybody. Sucks to see that there might be some turnover in this Cardinals organization after this season. DeAndre Hopkins still has a really nice night, 7 for 79. Could have been a little bit more, but could have come down with a couple touchdowns. Hollywood, 4 for 34. After Nate and I kind of dismissed him a couple times last week from some questions. Scott, how do you feel about this this Arizona offense moving forward rest of the season without Kyler Murray? Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins, you're still throwing him out there, but I don't know if there's much else besides him and James Conner that you can really bank on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody takes a hit with Kyler going down, regardless of, how people might feel about Kyler. He's better than Colt McCoy. But Colt McCoy is one of the more capable backups, I would say, in the league. So it's not a death, it's not just like complete wasteland now. So yeah, D-Hop is still just a start. I'm probably still rolling out Hollywood Brown. I still have faith. And James Conner. It's just it is a slight downgrade. But Kyler wasn't playing fantastic. He wasn't playing as bad as some people think. He was still like QB6, but he was playing more at his floor than his ceiling. So Colt McCoy isn't as much of a fall down the cliff as it might have been in seasons past. But it caps the whole offense. So, but I'm still probably starting those three.
Okay, Nate, any interest in? And when you say those three, you're saying D-Hop, Hollywood, James Conner,
yeah,
correct?
Sorry, yeah, those three, yes.
Okay. Nate, you and I have kind of been off Hollywood the last couple of weeks. Are you willing to ride it out here towards the end of the season with him and Colt McCoy now, or no?
I don't know. I mean, when McCoy starts, he throws the ball a lot. You look back to last season, he threw the ball 44 times in his low 100% snap share. And then, let's see, let me pull this up here. 2022, he threw the ball 40 times, 34 times, and 37 times in his starts this season. So when he's in, there's still going to be plenty of volume in this offense. It's, can he put together enough completions over 40 throws? And I think as he gets worked into this offense over the next couple of weeks, I think he can. So I do think there's value in Hollywood, maybe even a little bit of a bump for Rondale over the next, maybe 3 weeks.
Yeah. I'm hoping Rondale can get back. We haven't seen him in a couple weeks. So I'm hoping we see him. Broncos, Buccaneers, and Falcons. So not the best schedule, but not one I'm necessarily running from. But I think Scott summed it up very well. Everyone's going to take a hit here in this Arizona offense. So just be prepared for that. Maybe a little bit of a possible league winning action from James Conner, though, who might be relied on more down the stretch. Also leaving Monday Night Football was Ramondre Stevenson. I don't really want to get into this too much because we don't have any information. I tried scouring the internet for it today. No one's saying anything out of New England. Shocker. So, so I guess we're just gonna have to prepare for if Stevenson might be out there. But he did come back to the game and then exited again. Kevin Harris, Nate, would he be the next man up for you? Assuming Damian Harris is also out.
I don't know. Pierre Strong looked pretty good last night, guys. I was impressed with his carries. I think that complicates it if Stevenson and Harris are both out, because I think now we might see a mixture of Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong. And in that situation, you don't want to start either one because it's Bill Belichick. Who knows? I think that outside of Stevenson and Harris, if it's Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris, you just don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah. Any additional thoughts there on the New England backfield situation, Scott? Because I am kind of like with Nate. It almost feels kind of like a Tony Jones / Travis Homer situation in Seattle last week, where it could be very, very generous for fantasy managers, and it could be backfire on them as well.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I agree. If both Ramondre and Damian Harris are out, then even if Damian Harris is healthy and Ramondre is out, I would think it would go back to Damian Harris leading the backfield. But honestly, the best case scenario, I think, if you want to rely on a New England running back, is just for Ramondre to be healthy. Outside of that, I think it's a mess, and unless you're just in a total pinch at running back or a flex spot, I don't really want to risk that in the playoffs.
Okay. Craig in the chat saying agreed. Pierre ran strong. Love that play on words from our guy Craig. Good to see you tonight, buddy. Moving forward here, guys. Deebo Samuel suffers an ankle injury on Sunday. Is it a full send time on Brandon Ayuk? And does this give us any hope that maybe, just maybe, George Kittle can do something? 4 out of his last 5 games, less than 7 PPR points. It is atrocious right now. Nate, is there any hope that George Kittle can turn it around here? Brock Purdy did look excellent, Mr. Irrelevant, in his first start.
Well, yeah, he targeted him 5 times. Kittle had 4 catches. That's an improvement over some of the games we've seen lately. And I think their connection's only going to get stronger. And I think it's the same with Ayuk. If Debo misses significant time, which it sounds like he may, Shanahan's been so good this season with just using what he has and making the best of it. And now that's going to be Ayuk and Kittle for Brock Purdy. And I think it boosts Kittle rest of season and Ayuk.
Okay. Scott, we got Seahawks on Thursday night for the 49ers, Commanders, Raiders. So again, not a schedule we're running from by any means. The Commanders are going to be a little bit tougher of a matchup here. Like, can you trust George Kittle, I think is the question here, Scott, because Evan Ingram comes out, has a monster day. Like, would you consider starting Evan Ingram over George Kittle right now?
I have to make that consideration right now. I mean, it's difficult because of the name recognition with, it seems almost unfathomable to think about starting Evan Ingram over him. But I mean, Evan, and prior to this monster game by Ingram, he hadn't necessarily been lighting the world on fire either. But just based on the usage and what Kittle has done recently, what the recent trend is, it's very difficult to start him. And I mean, as far as Ayuk goes, like, he did catch the touchdown, but he only had 3 targets in the game. And I mentioned it a few podcasts ago. Man, is the 49ers both schedule against running backs and schedule against pass catching running backs super juicy in the playoffs. So we could see a ton of McCaffrey. Not that, they're still going to have to pass the ball to other people. And so, I mean, I think if Debo's not there, Ayuk's value bumps up, but I'm not necessarily saying to the moon. Because again, in this first start with Brock Purdy, only 3 targets.
Yeah, I think Christian McCaffrey is the big, just overall. I don't want to say there's a winner out of this Debo Samuel injury because the whole offense will probably draw back just a little bit. But Christian McCaffrey, guys, he could be honestly a league winner here. And if you have him, like I had him on a dynasty league a couple weeks ago, I contemplated selling him because I was kind of right on that playoff bubble, made it into the playoffs with him. And I feel really confident now moving forward as him being my RB1, RB2 in that situation. So yeah, CMC, I think, gets the biggest bump here with no Debo Samuel. He should be back for the playoffs. So if you are playing any fantasy playoffs, doing any keeper league, anything like that, keep Debo Samuel in mind for later in the season. Quickly want to talk about some quarterbacks as well here, gentlemen. Russell Wilson, Tyler Huntley, both concussed in addition to Kenny Pickett in week 15. Again, we can't really speculate too much. It looks like Russell Wilson is trending towards not playing. We don't have much information on the other quarterbacks yet, but just kind of a damning week for quarterbacks here, boys.
You hate to see it.
I mean,
but
it's
this. Go ahead.
You're good.
So
I was just going to say,
Scott, you're on a little bit of a lag, so sorry about that.
Am I on a lag?
Go ahead. You're good, man.
All right.
Nope.
Am I good?
You're good, bud.
All right. No, I mean, in super flex leagues, this is tricky, because you easily could be relying on somebody like Russell Wilson or Tyler Huntley. But in 1 QB leagues, like, I would hope that you're not down to starting either of these guys anyway at this point. I mean, Tyler Huntley had, he had some of that hype coming off the waiver wire because of that one good game last season. But, a huge downgrade from Lamar. And I mean, Russell Wilson did, finally have multiple touchdowns. And I think he finally surpassed the amount of bathrooms he has in touchdown passes this week.
Yeah.
But I mean, and again, obviously, I hope these guys are okay. These brain injuries are getting a little out of control. But, I don't think this is a huge hit fantasy wise.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that analysis there. Nate, any additional thoughts on these injuries? Also, Mike White, he got speared.
Dude, he got cut in half.
Oh my God. It was
twice.
Yeah, that was brutal,
twice.
Man.
Did you see the story about him and that game? So he got hit, went in, was evaluated for a rib injury. they told him he could sit. He says, no, I'll go back out. Went back out, got the second rib injury. They taped him up, sent him back out, finished the game, and left the stadium in an ambulance to have his ribs looked at. It was that bad of a rib injury, and he's going to start next week.
Are you sure? Are you confident he's going to
That's
start?
it's everything I've seen points towards he's been cleared. He can start. He's going to be practicing this week. So can we just say, like, whatever you think of his fantasy value, that dude is a warrior. Like,
yeah, that's
wow.
crazy.
People
Man.
love him.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's why people love him. If let's just say Mike White is out, in addition to these other quarterbacks that were concussed last weekend, who are you guys' favorite streamers? Right now, Jared Goff still less than 50% rostered in ESPN leagues, 44.9. He's been on a roll. He had a great performance last week, 3 touchdowns, 300 plus yards for Goffski. And then Brock Purdy, 7% rostered as well. Those were my favorite streamers looking at it. Is there anyone else you would add, Nate?
If you're a Mike White manager, I take a flyer on Flacco. We saw him be really good at the beginning of the season in this offense. And if you're hurting, it's not a bad ad.
I mean, with Flacco, like, he throws so much, and they have such a great schedule for quarterbacks. The Jets do, so he would not be a bad. I mean, you're gonna have to take your lumps with somebody like Flacco.
Sure, it's a 1 week rental, but
yeah, my concern with Goff is he has been playing well, but I mean, the Jets are a brutal matchup in Week 14, so that's a tough one because I mean, Goff has been good, but he's also put up some games that if he puts that type of game up in Week 14, you're probably going home.
I do like Aaron Rodgers too here moving forward, boys. Really favorable schedule. He's not out there in every league, but I know a lot of people were dropping him before the bye, so he could possibly be out there on waivers as well in some shallower leagues. So I would be interested in Aaron Rodgers as long as he's upright. He hasn't been great for fantasy, but he has not had a week that's killed you yet. So
right.
I'm all right with that in the fantasy playoffs. Like the worst thing to do a couple years ago, super flex league for me. My team puts up like 180, really good week in the semifinals. Derek Carr drops like 2 points for me. I never was able to forgive Derek Carr for that, but like that's the worst thing you can have is like a QB stinker. So I like those options you guys and I threw out there for you. Let's move on and talk quickly about the Cowboys. I don't know if it matters a ton right now, but they do lose right tackle Terrence Steele to an ACL. 4 straight games of 16 plus points for Zeke. He's bounced back very nicely off his injury. But Tony Pollard, oh my, guys, he is him, Tony Pollard. I was wrong about this guy. RB1 in 5 out of his last 6 games, RB7 on the season. Jacksonville, Philadelphia, Tennessee. Outside of Philly, those are not matchups that scare me for these running backs. Are we downgrading them at all, Scott, without Steele out there?
I mean, maybe slightly, but I mean, their running game is just working. You've got two viable, and I mean, it looked like for a minute there after Zeke's injury, when Tony Pollard had that explosion game, we might see it veer more towards one primary back, but it hasn't. They've both been fantasy relevant. They're both getting in the end zone, so I think it's a slight downgrade. Just, I mean, anytime your O-line takes a hit at a starting position, it's going to be a bit of a downgrade. But I'm starting both.
Okay, awesome. I don't know if anyone just picked that up on the YouTube, but a ladybug just flew on my glasses. So that was sweet.
Your own little Mike Pence moment.
Okay, all right, easy. There.
All right now.
Hey.
So, Nate, I want to talk about the other running backs in this Houston-Dallas game. And I was looking at this game. I said, there's no way Dallas is favored by 17 points. I rode with Houston last week against the spreads. So that was kind of fun to see that come to fruition. I saw some people actually had the money line on Houston, which
they almost lost.
Yeah, that would have been tough if you're riding the money line with Houston. But Dameon Pierce goes down in this one, Nate, with what is believed to be a high ankle sprain. He hasn't been great, though, over the last month. Just 7.9 fantasy points per game over that stretch. Hasn't topped 16 points since week 5. So he's just kind of been okay after we really kind of fell in love with him earlier in the season. The question is, Nate, how sexy do you feel? Do you feel sexy enough to dance with Rexy down the stretch, assuming Pierce is going to miss some time? Kansas City, Tennessee, Jacksonville. Kansas City's a really, really nice matchup.
Kansas City is a great matchup, and I think I'm okay with it. I mean, look at what he did last season in weeks 15, 16, and 17. He had 16 carries for 41 yards, nothing to write home about against Jacksonville. We're still talking 6 PPR points. But then in week 16 against the Chargers, he had 22 carries for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's a late season guy. He's a guy that is going to have one of those chunk games here over the next 2 to 3 weeks. The Dameon Pierce injury sets that up perfectly. I think he's still capable of it, but how do you know which game that's going to be?
And
That's
the fresh legs. He does have fresh legs, which is,
and that was the same thing with last season. He
Yeah.
had fresh legs, and once they needed him, he was ready to go. He really hasn't carried the ball much this season. They haven't asked him to really do a whole lot with Pierce. I mean, he didn't have a carry weeks 11 through 13 this season. So he's very fresh legged.
Scott, are you ballsy enough to roll out Sexy Rexy in your playoffs if you need a desperation RB2, or do you prefer to find other options here?
I mean, as it can play, I'm probably fine with it. I mean, the thing about Rex is if he's the guy, which he pretty much is at this point with Pierce out, that high ankle sprain's likely, at least probably the fantasy playoffs. You know, when he gets the volume, when he gets the market share in that running, wherever he is as a running back with his pass catching ability, I mean, I think he's a decent floor play. That almost sounded like foreplay. But the problem with Rex Burkhead was earlier in the season, he was putting up some points, but then once it became more shared, he just went completely dark. But I don't think there's that risk here. If he, and I mean, the Texans are playing for, the first overall pick, basically. So as a desperation play, yeah, I depending on who I'm choosing from, but I don't hate it. I'm not like my immediate reaction isn't like, oh, no way. Like, I would definitely consider it.
Last thing to note here before we move on to temperature check, boys, and talk about these fantasy playoffs, the how confident we feel in these players moving forward. I just want to touch on the Steelers-Panthers game coming up here in week number 15. The Panthers have a chance to really close the gap here against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They could walk away the NFC South winners, which seems absurd to think about.
It's insane.
But
what are we even talking about?
It is absurd, but like for fantasy purposes, in this game, do we feel confident rolling out anyone aside from Foreman, Najee, Patty Freiermuth, Chuba Hubbard? Because Deontay Johnson has just been blah all season, still hasn't scored a touchdown. There's no ceiling to him, and his floor is lower than ever as well. George Pickens is explosive, but man, does he have a low floor as well. So I don't think I can trust them. I don't want to trust Terrace Marshall or anything on the Panthers receiving game. Nate, aside from Patty Freiermuth and the RBs here, are you rolling out any of these players this week?
I might throw out George Pickens if I'm desperate and I need a ton of points in the unlikely event he goes off, but I think there's a chance. Otherwise, no. You can't. You can't.
Scott, are you interested at all in any of these players here?
No, I really, with both these teams, it's the running backs that I'm interested in, especially with Carolina. I mean, we'll get to it later, but the amount they're running as of late is crazy. So I Carolina passing game.
Okay. Awesome, guys. Appreciate you guys recapping this.
Just the running backs for me.
Perfect. Let's go ahead and let's move forward to our next segment here. Let's go ahead and jump into some temperature check.
Temperature check.
That's really spicy. Holy shit.
All right, temperature check, baby. We're going to tell you who can you trust here down the stretch, because trust is a big word right now. And Nate, does it seem like maybe it's just me and the season I'm having, but I feel like from a couple, like every month stretch, it seems like there's inconsistency from player to player. The defenses get better and worse as it goes. Like people we thought 2 months ago who were locked and loaded are trash now. People who we were telling people a couple weeks ago to drop Jerry Jeudy, and he goes out and has a huge week. So like it just seems a little crazy right now, right?
Yes, this has been the strangest fantasy season I can remember. And like obviously I can't remember back to 1992 when I started, but what I do remember, nothing's ever between injuries, players underperforming that we thought were going to be huge, like Jonathan Taylor. I've never seen an RB1 like that just not produce.
Yeah, except the Le'Veon Bell year when he didn't play, but
that's true. Le'Veon, okay, fair enough. But like this has just been a season full of that. Crazy amounts of injuries, crazy amounts of concussions. San Francisco's on their third quarterback and they're tied for the division lead. So like
yeah. So how we're going to play temperature check here, boys, is I'm going to go through a player. I'm going to name them, talk a little bit about them, and give you my opinion on them. I want to know from you, are you rare, which means you're full send on them? Are you medium, like you're probably still starting them, but you have hesitations? Or are you well done, meaning you don't want anything to do with this player down the stretch here? We used to play it the other way, but I was told well done is not a good steak. So apparently I'm an uncultured guy.
Yeah. Well, if you like well done steak, I mean, I'm sorry if the shoe fits.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I want to start with Jalen Waddle. I put him on the thumbnail today, boys, because I am having trouble trusting him. I think I might bench him in a couple leagues this week. He has not finished better than wide receiver 31 since week 9. He has been a wide receiver 1 this season, but really starting to slip, boys. 2 is not looking great either. Buffalo, Green Bay, New England. So nothing I'm running from right now. Like New England was a way worse matchup earlier in the season. They lost their number 1 cornerback last night to injury. I'm not sure how long he will be out for. Jack Jones, that is. So, Scott, how do you feel about Jalen Waddle? Can you trust Waddle?
I mean, I'm getting to the point where I can't, and it sucks because I have so much Waddle. But I mean, again, it's one of those things where it's the playoffs, and you have to balance getting too cute with decisions with also not getting distracted by somebody's name or their early season, their early season success. So as always, it depends on who I'm choosing from. But yeah, Waddle, if I'm putting him in as like my wide receiver 2 in the playoffs, I'm nervous about it at this point.
Okay. Nate, I want to pose a hypothetical, which is actually a situation I'm in. So maybe you can lend me a little bit of advice with the IBT family. I have Waddle right now as my wide receiver 3 in a league. I have Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson ahead of him. Wow. I'm thinking about benching him this week for Garrett Wilson and Christian Watson. Is that a mistake with what we've seen out of Waddle and the Dolphins as a whole of late?
No. There's something going on with, like you said, Tua. I'm at a point where I'm medium well on him. I'm kind of in between because I want to still trust him, but I can't. But I'm not full panic quite yet.
He could draw up like a 40 burger.
He could. He could. So I'll probably start him this week. But Garrett Wilson and Christian Watson, that's also, I think they have higher ceilings this week, honestly, than Jalen Waddle does. So I would probably do it. And then if he pops this week, maybe you can go back to starting him.
We got Albert in the chat saying, would you guys start Devonta Smith over Waddle this week? Scott, how do you feel about that, putting you on the spot, bud?
That one's close. And because of my connection issues that I've been having, I had to just shut down all other tabs. So I'm running blind with stats.
Bears this week right now for the Eagles. Bears.
I'm probably still starting Waddle over Devonta Smith personally.
Okay. I don't know if I could. I think I'd honestly take Smith right now. I think.
But I would, at the same time, I mean, Garrett Wilson and Christian Watson in your situation. I mean, I don't know how you bench Christian Watson at this point, for any reason. I mean, I don't care about touchdown regression. We're in the last 3 weeks of the season. That, you know what I mean? Like him scoring a touchdown per game, the next 3 games is just as likely as anybody in the league. So I've got to start Christian Watson. And Garrett Wilson is, the quarterback issue there notwithstanding. He's having a strong end of the season too. So I talked myself back into it. I'd start Devonta Smith over Waddle. Forget it.
I would also go Devonta Smith this week as well. Nate, are you on board with Devonta over Waddle?
I don't know, man. Like Devontae Smith's been really good, but also the Bears secondary isn't bad. They've been pretty good against wide receivers the last few weeks.
Dude, I don't know.
But I think I'm still going to say I'm going to go Smith over Waddle this week.
They just lost Kyle Fuller lately. I feel like they're going to get torn apart here from Jalen Hurts. I could be wrong on that, but I'm going to go Devonta Smith here with Scott. A great question about the Alabama receivers from Albert there. Moving forward, I do want to talk about Jerry Jeudy, and I just kind of wrap up that discussion. I would guess we would both say, or all of us would say, Jalen Waddle like a low end wide receiver 2 rest of season rather than the wide receiver 1 he's been. Is that fair?
Yeah. Or worse. Hopefully not worse, but
okay. Jerry Jeudy, though, guys, comes off a wide receiver 1 overall finish on 3 TDs, averaging over 16 points per game in games where he has finished and started healthy. He's got Arizona, the Rams, and Kansas City on the docket for him, so nothing I am running from. However, we don't know what the quarterback situation is, and I just don't know how to peg Jerry Jeudy anymore, boys. Like, I truly do not know how to think about him. I loved him coming into the season because he was so good at getting separation. This year, he keep in mind, last year was the number 1 receiver in separation per target. This year, 93rd, 1.35 yards per target of separation. Scott, thinking about those numbers, like, how do you feel about Jeudy moving forward? Because he does catch 3 touchdowns here. He was electric, but it's so hard to trust anything in this Denver offense in general. Where are you on the meter?
I'm medium-ish with Jerry Jeudy. I mean, to put it this way, like if we were talking about this a week ago, I'd be well done. But we just saw 3 touchdowns, so you can't chase touchdowns, but you also can't ignore them. But at the same time, as bad as Russell Wilson's been, he is the starter, and he might not be the starter this coming week. I would have a hard time rolling Jerry Jeudy out in my lineup. I mean, if you just take this last week's game, yeah, it looks great. But if you look at how their offense has operated over a longer sample size the whole season, I mean, their passing game has not been trustworthy. So I'm medium with Jerry Jeudy.
Nate, sounds like Scott kind of has him in that wide receiver 3 flex range right now. Is that about where you are on Jeudy, despite the just terrific performance from him and your Broncos this last week?
Oh, wide receiver 3 flex on like the high end of his outcomes rest of season. I loved what we saw against Kansas City. That was really cool as a Broncos fan to get to watch and listen to on the radio him score 3 touchdowns. But I have concerns because, first of all, this was unlike anything we've seen Denver do all season. This offense hasn't been nearly that good at any point in any game. So it feels kind of like a one-off to me. Russell Wilson's out next week against Arizona. Likely he's trending towards not playing. Then they've got the Rams, which is a good matchup. But then they've got Kansas City at home in week 17. And I will tell you something, as a Broncos fan, lifelong, when the Broncos go into Arrowhead in December, it never goes well. They just get destroyed. It's been that way for 30 years. They just get absolutely destroyed at Arrowhead. I mean, they've lost 13 consecutive games now to the Chiefs. I don't like that week 17 matchup, and I don't think that Judy's going to be a factor. He's not going to put up 30 points again, guys. Like, there's no way.
Yeah, super stressful situation there. And last week, oh my God. So just kind of have to vent a little bit to you guys on this one. I throw out a little plus 1,200 parlay. All 3 legs hit in the early games. All I need Denver to do is lose by more than 9 points, and I hit. All game, I'm looking good. And then they somehow claw it out, and the Chiefs win by 8. They could have kicked a field goal, but no, it doesn't happen. So I could have cashed out for still would have been my largest payday on any parlay this year. Didn't take the payday, tried to ride it out. So frustrating there overall, but it sounds like you guys are really putting us in check right now over the situation in Denver there. Moving forward here, guys, looks like we have a question from Lucius. He's saying, great show so far. What do you guys think about the Pats running back situation? Hard to tell who's playing. Is Strong worth picking up off waivers this week? We talked a little bit about this earlier, Lucius, but it's kind of hard to trust anything if Ramondre isn't going. You can pick up Kevin Harris. You can pick up Pierre Strong, but it's so hard to trust with Bill Belichick. So if you want more analysis, you can hop back. I think we maybe talked about that maybe in like the 7 to 10 minute mark. But overall, like we're not too interested in the Pats situation if there is no Stevenson. Appreciate the question either way, though, Lucius. Gabe Davis, next one I want to talk about. Everyone's darling early on here, boys. Wide receiver 45 or worse in 5 out of his last 7 games since the Buffalo bye. Miami, Chicago, Cincinnati. So 2 decent matchups here in the next 2 weeks, Scott. Can you trust Gabriel Davis?
I mean, not if I can help it. I mean, I was never like on either side of this crazy spectrum that was there over
I
the
don't think any of
offseason.
us were. Yeah, I think we.
Yeah, I was just kind of like I was just like Gabe Davis is a boomer bust wide receiver. Moving on, and that's what he's been. He's had some big games, but he hasn't had one in a while. So you can choose to look at that in a couple different ways. He's due. Okay, do you want to risk that in your fantasy playoffs? Or, I mean, what's been troubling as of late is there has been some games because the knock was always if he got more volume, he would be a wide receiver 1. And he's been getting not consistently necessarily, but he's had some spike games of volume that didn't amount to anything. He's still that boomer bust guy. So I'm medium to medium well with Gabe Davis personally. I'm not really willing to take that risk in the playoffs.
Nate, I kind of sit right where Scott does. I'm kind of medium well. If I need high upside, maybe I'll throw him out there. But they just brought in Cole Beasley this week too, who apparently is unretired. Like apparently he just didn't want to be in Tampa Bay is really what he was saying. He's not saying I don't want to play football anymore. I don't want to play football with this team. So I could see them trying to get Beasley a little more involved and get him into speed the next couple of weeks heading into the playoffs.
So that's what I was going to bring up is that, guys, they signed Cole Beasley. They brought this dude out of retirement, brought him onto the practice squad, and he's expected to possibly be active this weekend. That tells me that this team doesn't love Gabe Davis.
Isaiah McKenzie as well, probably even more.
Well, that's the thing.
But it's both. It's both. They feel like they needed to add that dynamic playmaker that Cole Beasley was last season. And whether you like it or not, and his stupid raps and his stupid attitude and his stupid face, the guy is a good wide receiver 3 in most offenses, right? Like the skill set's there. Gabe Davis is exactly what I think the 3 of us thought he was going to be this season. He's an up and he's a down. It's a boom week. It's a bust week. But the signing of Cole Beasley, I think that just kind of does him in. He has had 7, 5, 7, and 4 targets over the last 4 weeks. He hasn't managed over 10 fantasy points in any of those games. Like, what more does he need to show us that you just aren't going to start him the rest of the season?
If you've gotten this far consistently starting Gabe Davis in your wide receiver 2 or 3 spot, congratulations.
Dude, maybe you must have like Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes. Like,
yeah, I mean, congrats for making it this far with them, but I think you should be considering other options right now is what we're saying. If you want to chase the upside, go for it. But, you don't need to be doing that.
Right.
Want to talk about Travis Etienne here, boys. He has been another one who's just fallen off a cliff, just like Dameon Pierce as of late, averaging 5.1 PPR points over the last month. One of those games was injury shortened, I will say. However, it's been atrocious here, Nate. Dallas, Jets, Tennessee, first 2 matchups I don't love for Travis Etienne here.
Well, they're starting to throw the ball more. It's like Zay Jones is the new darling on that team. Trevor Lawrence is playing so much better. They're not having to lean on the run as much. And I think that's affecting Etienne's value. I don't love him rest of season. I'm probably we'll say medium, between medium and medium well, somewhere like right in there, leaning towards medium where I'm still going to start him. But if he burns me another week, he's going to my bench.
I like that play.
It's tricky with Etienne. I mean, he's had a smattering of tough matchups. I mean, last week was against the Titans, one of the better run defenses, but week 14 is against the Cowboys, even at least lately a better run defense. It does get easier for Etienne with the Jets and the Texans. Week 15 was 16 and 17. This might be oversimplifying, but I'll be talking about this a little bit later too. But the one thing that gives me a little bit of hope is that the Jaguars have the worst schedule for passing games, for quarterbacks and for wide receivers. Brutal in the playoffs. So maybe they will rely on the run a little bit more against the teams they're facing are stronger. I mean, Dallas is just strong on defense. Unless you play their DST as a smash against the Texans and they get you 5 points like last week. But overall, the Dallas DST has been really tough. So I'm in the same boat. I'm medium to medium rare. He's a guy based on where I have, where he stands in most of my lineups. I'm starting him. I really wish he had smashed and continued to ascend into that RB1 territory.
He was right there. Right there.
Yeah. So,
and he'll be there next season.
Yeah.
I like the Jags' future, man, of their offense.
Doug
100%.
Peterson.
100% agree with you guys. Unfortunately, he's not the only running back, though, that has underperformed. And Alvin Kamara has also scored single digits in 4 out of his last 5, still getting really like a healthy dose of targets. But since his week 8, 42.8 performance, only scored 40.3 fantasy points across 5 games. So has not been very effective lately. Scott, can you trust him? Atlanta, Cleveland, Philly coming up. I think I still got to chase this. Like I feel like I'm more confident in Kamara maybe having a smash game these next couple weeks than ETN, just because we have seen it in the past, and maybe I'm holding on to false hope, but I don't think I can bench him, even though he has been atrocious. No,
I don't think I can either. Especially if you're in full PPR, I just don't think you can bench somebody like Kamara. And they're coming off their bye, so you always hope that maybe on their bye they're like, oh hey, we should get it to that Alvin guy more. He's really good. But they have a really good playoff schedule for running backs. So I'm rolling with him. He's one of those guys. I doubt I've got somebody. The people on my bench I might consider starting over him is what I consider getting a little too cute, probably at this point. Yeah. If he stinks it up against Atlanta, then I might be for one, my season might be over. And 2, I might be making a different decision for week 15.
The Cleveland matchup in week 16 is very appealing. They've been a very good matchup really since the beginning of the season to running back. So I would be interested in him there. Nate, any additional thoughts on Kamara? Yeah, it's been shitty, but I think we got to keep rolling with this guy. We've seen what he can do just this season. He has a ceiling higher than almost any other running back on the slate.
Well, and you nailed it. He has a ceiling higher than any other running back on the slate, and he's about to go up against 2 awful defenses against the run. The only matchup I'm worried about is Philly in week 17.
Yep.
But if he plays well against Atlanta and Cleveland, I'm going to roll him out in week 17. If he doesn't play well against Atlanta or Cleveland, I'm not starting him in week 17. I want to win, and I'm willing to do weird things in championships with players trending down.
Yep, I certainly agree with that analysis, guys. I appreciate it. Let's round out the discussion here on the fantasy playoffs panic and trust meter with Trevor Lawrence. Where does he go in our scale of rare, medium, and well? Where does Trevor Lawrence go overall? QB 10 in points per game. Last 4 games here, QB 4. But it was a very favorable schedule for him. 0 interceptions since week 8 here. Dallas, Jets, Houston. All top 5 fewest points allowed to quarterback matchups on the horizon. He's been so good, guys. But is it time to get away from him? Scott, was it you the one who wanted to talk about Trevor tonight?
Yeah, I added in Lawrence because I just think it's an interesting one because he's been so good, which I'm so stoked to see. I love it when these quarterbacks who are given up on because they didn't smash as a rookie finally click. Like we've seen it with Justin Fields this year. We've seen it with Trevor Lawrence now. I'm really interested to see how he performs in these games from obviously from a fantasy standpoint, but just as an analyst and somebody who's looking at the projecting of these players. These 3 weeks against these matchups could tell a pretty concise story about Trevor Lawrence. If he's able, because that's the thing is like we spend a lot of time this time of year talking about matchups, as we should. We have to look at the matchups. We want to maximize that edge we might have. But if you think a quarterback is just good, then you start them even in bad matchups. I'm almost there with Lawrence.
I agree. I'm very close to being there.
So I think I'm medium rare on Lawrence. I think just, if his matchups were any better, it would be full on rare. The cow's still mooing. Because he's been so good and they pass it so much, and the weapons he has, so I just wanted to throw him in there because it's a really good comparison of talent, and recent success versus a brutal matchup and what we do with that. In Lawrence's case, I'm probably still starting him.
Yeah, I think so too, especially with Kyler Murray and the injuries just piling up at the quarterback position. He is a QB1 for me this week, looking at the landscape. I counted him out a couple weeks ago against Baltimore, and he showed out, proved me wrong. So I think we got to keep rolling Trevor Lawrence here, guys. I love the discussion here on the panic meter. We're going to move forward in the show within the scope. I want to welcome in everyone to the podcast. I see we have some new faces coming in. Just want to let you guys know, if you do like feel-good lifestyle advice combined with your fantasy sports analysis, subscribe to the channel, come back and hang out with us again. That's what we do here at IBT Media. Guys, let's jump into some In the Scope.
I have the stars in my sights.
Requesting permission to engage.
In the scope.
In the Scope. If you guys have been listening to this segment all year, we have been saving you guys' fab. Last week, I highlighted Chuba Hubbard. I thought he could be a really good stash and someone that you could play not only last week against Seattle, but moving forward here. He's one of the top waiver ads this week. We're going to talk a little bit about him. Before we get into our In the Scope candidates, the players that we think you can get after the waivers run, let's talk about the mainstream guys right here. We talked a little bit about quarterbacks here, but Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, they're my favorite streamers this week. If you need someone, Nate, how hot are you on these two?
I love Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy is about to be everyone's favorite new quarterback. I've compared him to people like Kurt Warner and Tom Brady today. As far as situation, I think it's very interesting that he had a Tom Brady-esque game against Tom Brady in a Tom Brady-esque situation. Just saying. But I really like Brock Purdy a lot. I think rest of season, obviously he's the starter there. He's got weapons. He's shown how effective he can be. And dude, Goss, this team has a shot at the playoffs, guys. I mean, Goss playing well enough to get this team in contention. So I like it.
Okay. Scott, I want to pivot over to wide receivers, the mainstream options here. It's Donovan Peoples-Jones, which, guys, is it going to take us all season get his roster percentage above 50%? We highlighted him in a week 6 in the Scope segment that I liked him as someone who you could have picked up back then for free. You can still pick him up. You're probably going to have to claim him this week, but he's been electric despite Deshaun Watson being putrid. Scott, how much do you like Donovan Peoples-Jones and DJ Chark? Welcome back to Mr. Chark as well, who's been excellent down the stretch.
Oh, I love DPJ. We love DPJ at IBT, FYI. I mean, even with whatever that guy's name is as quarterback kind of stinking up the room in Cleveland. Do you want to know what his target share was in week 14?
Please.
30%. Just above 30%.
Elite.
With Amari Cooper out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, DPJ. Yeah, I think he's kind of the poster boy for this segment, for this season, for IBT. I mean, yes, we've mentioned his name multiple times, but I think he's one of those perfect candidates that no one is rushing to the waiver wire for whatever reason. And as far as the theme of these players, he's one of the best ones out there to grab. DJ Chark, I love to see it, man. He's battled injury all year, but he's just yet another weapon for Goff. And, as Nate was saying, I do like Goff as well. But the only thing I'm worried about DJ Chark is again, the Lions rest of season schedule is much more friendly to running backs. So they might run it a little bit more. But you can't argue with what he's done the last few games, just under 100 yards in both games. I mean, obviously has chemistry with Jared Goff. He's seemingly closer to healthy than he's been all season. So yeah, both these guys.
We got Brad here in the chat saying Detroit Lions right now are top 5 NFC team. If you look at how all the NFL NFC teams are playing, you can't name 5 better teams right now. And I can't in that conference. They've won 5 out of 6, almost pulled out one on Thanksgiving against the Bills too. They've been electric, and we're going to continue to ride that hot hand here. Let's shift to the mainstream running back options this week on a lot of waiver wires, guys. First one, we touched on him early in the show. We won't get too much into it, but Sexy Rexy, 7.1% rostered. Rex Burkhead, that is. Chuba Hubbard, I was all over him last week. I still like him moving forward, 19% rostered. Get him on your rosters. And then a guy that Scott and I have highlighted both on this segment twice this season. One was me, I think, week 1 or 2. I was a little bit early to the party on Jerick McKinnon. But, Scott, you highlighted him a couple weeks ago, too. 34.6% rostered. Just dropped a 30 burger. And, like, it seems like now the Chiefs are using exactly how they were down the stretch last year, Scott. I couldn't be more excited. I just wish this was earlier in the season when I had him in all my rosters.
Well, I mean, yeah, the Chiefs, it's almost like, they're using Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon how Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon should be used. And Jerick McKinnon, obviously he gets most of his play in the passing game, but he excels at that. I threw him into a lineup this past week, a little bit of a okay, I'll give him a shot this week in a game, honestly, that I needed to win to make the playoffs in a dynasty league, and pleasantly surprised. So Jerick McKinnon. One more thing about Chuba Hubbard. I just wanted to throw in a few quick stats. It's not going to take a Foreman injury. Chuba Hubbard is going to have fantasy relevance the rest of the season. Since Sam Darnold, okay, so on the season, the pass run ratio for the Panthers is a little bit above 50% pass, a little bit below 50% run. Since Sam Darnold took over, the 2 games they've played with Darnold, 30% pass, 70% run.
Absurd.
For the last 5 games, it's like 40% pass, 60% run. They are running, and their defense
winning
well enough that they are in games, so they can continue to run. They played the Seahawks, who I guess you just bank 200 rushing yards, anybody that plays them these days. But yeah, Chuba, I like, and I haven't really ever been a Chuba guy, but I like him rest of the season.
Yeah, I know somewhere out in Northern California, a guy Bo McBrayer's rolling in his bed right now because he hates Chuba Hubbard. But I like him, man. And I talked about it last week. Like, they need to see what they have in this guy because they have 7 picks in the first 5 rounds of drafts. So I actually got a DM from someone saying, "Hey, thank you for highlighting Chuba Hubbard on this segment last week because he was a really big asset for me here, helped me win in week 14, get into the playoffs." So I was glad to hear that. Couple tight ends we'll quickly touch on. Evan Ingram out there, 44.5% rostered. You should be picking him up if you need a tight end right now. It's crazy, but Evan Ingram's been great, guys. And then I want to pronounce this right. Chig Okun. Nate, can you help me with that? You're good with weird names.
Gee, why could that be? Chigoziem Okonkwo.
Okay, so rookie tight end for the Tennessee Titans. We've seen him come on the last couple weeks. Some really sharp analysts were pointing it out 2-3 weeks ago, last week as well. Nate, you highlighted him in your column today. You're okay with spending up fab if you need a tight end.
Treylon Burks has been good when he's in. He's hurt or concussion, and we know that that's turning into like a 2-week injury at this point. They're being so cautious with it. Robert Woods hasn't done jack shit, guys. They paid him a lot of money to be fairly fantasy irrelevant. But Chig has been the fantasy tight end 3 in PPR formats for the last 3 weeks. He's seeing the usage. He's seeing the snap counts. He's seeing the snap share. And let's be honest, man, like, tight end landscape sucks right now. It's just hard to. Evan Ingram, tight end 1.
Hero. Evan Ingram's he's a hero right now for people.
Dude, the only person I saw talking about Evan Ingram was Andrew Cooper of Fantasy Alarm. So shout out to Andrew for being a little bit early on that one.
Hey, I liked those tweets. Does that count?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, I did place an anytime TD bet, I think in week 2 or 3 on Evan Ingram. So I was too early to the party. on Ingram that week. But guys, I love the analysis on these top mainstream waiver options. Let's dig a little deeper to our free agent finds, our in the scope targets. These are players you can pick up probably after your waivers run. Save that fab. You might need it here in week 16 and 17. Scotty, you're up first, buddy.
All right. So mine's somewhat injury dependent, but my sure thing sleeper is Chris Moore, wide receiver for the Houston Texans. It's a little bit of a last man standing situation, but what we saw when he was the last man standing in week 14 was catching 10 of 11 targets, 40% target share for 124 yards. His route participation went up to above 90%. Now, again, this Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks were both out. I don't think we know yet whether they're going to be available in the next week. I think Collins might be a little bit more likely than Brandon Cooks. Who knows with Brandon Cooks? They're out of it. He could just get shut down for the rest of the season. Who knows? So if both those guys are playing, then this is a little bit less of a call. But I mean, Chris Moore showed it. He is the target when those guys are out. And looking at Houston, I mean, they play Kansas City, who they've been better against receivers lately as opposed to season long, but still a decent matchup. You got Tennessee, who is the best matchup for receivers season long. They're the third best matchup over their last 5 games. And then you've got Jacksonville. They're the 4th best wide receiver matchup season long, last 5 games, however you want to look at it. So very, very good schedule. Dameon Pierce is gone, Dameon Pierce is out at least probably for a few games, if not the rest of the season. They're probably going to be passing it more. So again, even if just one of those other guys is out, Chris Moore, who's 4.7% rostered on Sleeper, in one QB redraft right now, I think he's a great after waivers run. Grab him if you're stuck and you get that injury news, throw him in there.
Yeah, Chris Moore's been very effective out of the slot. He runs a lot out of the slot. So whether it's Davis Mills, whether it's Jeff Driscoll, or any of these knuckleheads back there for Houston, I think he's really appealing. What was with that? What was with them switching back and forth from Jeff Driscoll and Davis Mills? Was Mills hurt? Because one drive I was watching Driscoll, the next I was watching Dougie Mills. So I was just a little confused on what was happening there. And no, they weren't. I was watching Red Zone, so it was kind of flipping back and forth. I didn't know, Nate, you're kind of a Texans whisperer over there. You have any insight on what's going on?
No, I think the team's just choosing to use 2 quarterbacks. Lovie Smith said they were going to do it again this week. The Broncos did this one season. John Elway was hurt, and we had Tommy Maddox. I think it was his rookie season. We had another rookie quarterback, Sean Moore, and the Broncos literally against the Dallas Cowboys that week went series for series for series through the entire first half. So it's not unheard of. It's an interesting strategy, but it worked for Chris Moore last week. So
yeah. Scott, I really like Chris Moore, though. I think if Nico Collins or Brandon Cooks are sidelined and or both of them, I think he's a really good play. I mean, we're seeing his targets creep up each and every week. So really good call here, Scotty. Nate, why don't you hit us with your in the scope target here for week number 15, please, my man.
So I'm going with another wide receiver, but I'm going to go with Isaiah Hodgins in New York. There hasn't been a lot to love lately in this offense, guys. Like it's been kind of gross. They've lost 4 of their last 5, something like that. It's been ugly. We thought things were going to get better with Bellinger coming back. There was going to be some clarity with receivers and targets where they were going to go. But now Bellinger's hurt again. But Hodgins has actually been fairly reliable the last 3 weeks. He's had a 70 plus week. Yeah. Well, he's had a 70+% snap share the last 3 weeks, which are the 3 highest of the season for him. He had 4, 6, and 6 targets, but he's had 2 really good games with a touchdown. And who's going to come in? And Kenny Golladay? I mean, no. Galladay's going to Galladay. That's just the way of it. Richie James has been getting involved a little bit. Obviously, Darius Slayton. But the matchups are really good for him for the fantasy playoffs as well. I like them. They're at Washington, at Minnesota. I don't love the Washington matchup. At Minnesota, but then they have Indy at home for the fantasy championships. Like, it's a really good schedule, and he's a wide receiver 3 flex. But pretty much every team right now out there could use a good wide receiver 3 or flex play. And he's rostered in 0.4% of ESPN leagues, folks. 0.4%.
Wow. So I didn't realize it was that low.
So he's available. in your league?
It's not a sexy name. He didn't work out where he was before. I think it was Buffalo before coming to New York here. But he could be a guy down the stretch here. They're using him. It doesn't look like OBJ is going to be back with the team. So they could be rolling into the playoffs. Granted, they make the playoffs with Hodgins as their number 2 here, Nate. I think it's a really sneaky call. I like this one almost as much as Chris Moore, if not better than Chris Moore. Like I said, I had to roll Hodgins out in a league last week. I was in a pinch from a couple bye weeks. So Hodgins, man, I don't mind that at all here. Any time frame on when we could see Bellinger back, Nate?
No, we haven't really heard anything official, but at this point, like, I feel like they're going to ease him back into anything.
Okay. Albert saying here too. Albert always informed. We appreciate you, buddy. Saying Richie James in concussion protocol, so might not see Mr. RJ this week. And then we just want to catch up on a couple comments in the chat here too. Albert saying Jeff Driscoll has tight end eligibility on Yahoo. That's cool. That's fun. I don't think I really want to use him, but that is interesting. I really do like that mention there, Albert. And then Brad saying, Seth, the Texans are trying this new technique called tanking. So that makes sense as well. Maybe even more than the Broncos comparison old Nate was throwing out.
They've got it pretty well wrapped up.
Really, really good. Really good in the scope targets, guys. I honestly like those a lot. When I came to the table tonight, normally I'm the first one to submit mine. Those were 2 I was looking at, and they were both taken. So I said, okay, let's pivot a little bit, boys. Let's pivot, talk about something we don't normally do, and that's defenses here. And I want to highlight a defense right now that is sub 10% rostered, probably not going to be claimed this week. I think you can get them probably after waivers run. Quietly a top 10 defense this week or this season, 3.5 sacks over the last 4. That's the Carolina Panthers D/special teams here, guys. Allowed an average of 15.5 points per game over that last month span. 2 of those games, Ravens and Seahawks. So they haven't played all bad opponents here. The Panthers, Pittsburgh this week. I love that matchup, especially with no Kenny. Could get some Mitchell Trubisky pick sixes possibly. Detroit, I will not play them against Detroit with the burner they're on right now. But Tampa Bay, that could be a game for the division, boys. That could be a game for the NFC South. And the way Brian Burns and this J.C. Horn stepped up lately, I love it. They're not getting a ton of turnovers, but the sacks are so great right now that I have to roll out them moving forward here, guys. Negatives just once this season versus the Bengals. Am I nuts for thinking Panthers DST like it's 2018 again, boys?
Not at all. I mean, we touched on them a little bit earlier. I mean, they get Pittsburgh and whoever's going to be the quarterback this week. And I mean, then they get Detroit. But like the thing about DSTs is, and I think I mentioned this last podcast, it's not always going to be about getting the points that you're rewarded for them giving up few points. It's going to be turnovers and sacks a lot of times. And I think a game, Carolina and Detroit, even though they might lose some of that points allowed bonus, they could still be a good matchup with sacks, with a higher offensive game, potentially more turnovers. I think they're a great pickup.
Awesome little DST love here. Nate, any final thoughts? We've kind of talked about this defense more than we ever really talked about any defenses today.
So shout out Brad Bolt for telling me this a few weeks ago, and I was like, no, their defense isn't going to get better. And what do you know? Brad was right. So apparently this offense is going to get much better over the next few weeks too, and I believe Brad. So shout out Brad. Everything you said also, Seth.
Yep, Sam Darnold to the rescue.
Let's go, baby. Let's go. Well, guys, that will about do it here for the top of the show. We're going to round it out here with some weekly advice and just tell little stories, talk a little bit of advice on how, if we do end up not winning our fantasy football championships, which we hope you do, how we can make the best of it here in weekly advice.
Weekly advice.
All right, weekly advice. So we just heard from Pat Fitzmaurice on Friday, and Pat was telling us, Nate, that he hasn't won a fantasy championship since 2019 or something like that. Like
Ooh,
it just
unfollow. now.
It just attests like how hard it is to do this, how hard it is to win a fantasy football championship. So super interesting to hear that from Pat. So I think it's just reality we need to face. There are 12 or 10, maybe a different amount of teams in your league, maybe more, maybe less. One of those are going to go home with a trophy. The other of us, we have to be respectful. We have to take our licks and learn lessons from the season. But I kind of just want to open up the floor here. I have a story I would like to share before we close out here. But do you guys have any stories about learning to lose gracefully or any advice you can give our listeners? Scott, I want to start with you, man. You have 2 little girls, so I'm sure this is a lesson that you're trying to instill in them as they continue to grow.
I'm really trying, but I've always been so competitive with everything that I have not necessarily been the biggest role model on losing gracefully. One quick little story example I want to give is I remember I was playing baseball in high school and we were playing our crosstown rival. I was up with 2 outs, guys on second and third, down by 1 run. So classic situation. Base hit wins the game. I grounded out. And there's actually video footage as I ran through first base and realized I was out. There's video footage of me throwing my helmet as far as I possibly could, and then unsuccessfully trying to rip up my batting gloves as I screamed. So this was in high school, and but that image of myself doing that and remembering how that felt has stuck with me. Like that isn't cool, right? Mm-hmm. So I really try. I mean, it's tough. My advice is, and I put out a tweet earlier today. If you want to go check it out, where I kind of talked about this a little bit, where it's okay to get frustrated about it. It's okay to voice and express that frustration. Like, don't listen to the people like, we don't want to hear about it. Oh, you're just whining. You're just complaining. Don't listen to that. Come talk to me. Come talk to any of us at IBT. If you need somewhere to vent. I think it's not realistic to say, hey, just don't get frustrated because it's fantasy football and it's not real life and blah, 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 whatever. If you get frustrated, it doesn't really matter what's frustrating you. Talk about it. Talk to somebody about it. Get it out of your head. That helped me today. I was in a pretty frustrated place earlier this morning with how some of my fantasy in and out playoff situations transpired, and I wrote this tweet where I got some of it out of my head, and put it out there, and I felt better afterwards. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Don't feel ashamed if you get frustrated and you get mad and you voice it. It's good for you. It's therapeutic to get that stuff out of your head. So like I said, if you do want to commiserate about fantasy football, bad beats, any of that kind of stuff, hit me up anytime. It's painful, but I enjoy talking with other people about that who know what that experience feels like. So that's my biggest advice. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. It's okay to be frustrated. Talk about it. Just don't let it linger and take too much power over you.
Man, I love that story, Scott. I appreciate you sharing that with us, being a little vulnerable, even though that's a situation you don't really love, talking about. We have Brad saying, "So
Stop
true,
it.
Scott. Nate is amazing. He is probably sick of all the DMs I say expressing my frustration." Never, Brad. We appreciate. It's a game, and I know a lot of T. Higgins managers were very frustrated here in week number 14. So I feel that. Nate, you kind of talked about it a little bit earlier in your column. You compared being a fantasy manager to being a homeowner, and how sometimes you just want to give it to someone else and have it be someone else's problem. Talk a little bit about that, and if you have any stories or anything you can talk about accepting defeat.
Well, I accept defeat with this house on a daily basis. Seth, I tell you, it's like, okay, so I went to change a light this week in our laundry room. The light bulb went out. The fixtures have been in there for about 9 years. Pulled the light bulb out. It's one of these little like 2-prong ones. It's not like a normal just screw in, right? And we're like, no, this is stupid. We don't even know if they make these light bulbs anymore. So we bought some fixtures off of Amazon. Why, Scott? Why were there 5, 6 negative wires that were like the thick gauge copper all twisted together?
What?
It's dude, you try wiring that.
Oh my God.
It's aluminum wiring.
That's ridiculous.
So for 2 days I tried to get it done. And every time Jen heard something hit the ground upstairs in our laundry room, she also heard some 4-letter words follow it. So this is how well I do with losing. Once in high school, we were getting beat. We got put in the wrong division in baseball in Legion, and we were a freshman team playing 5A varsity teams, and we played the state champions over the summer, and I gave up like 15 runs in 3 innings, and I got so frustrated I just started hitting batters because the coach wouldn't pull me. And I figured if I hit 3 or 4 guys, they were going to toss me because I hated losing so bad. I just wanted out of the game.
Hey, well, I love that story, Nate. I think that's really, really good advice there. Is, we're going to get frustrated here in fantasy football, but we are here to help. And speaking of here to help, before we round out the show, we got some questions I do want to address here. First, we got Michael O'Day. What's up, Michael? Thanks for making us part of your evening, man. He's saying Chris Olave or Waddle in the flex. Please help. Mike, we went on a very long rant about Jalen Waddle and why it's really hard to trust him. He's more of a low-end wide receiver too for us moving forward. This week, Chris Olave, he's got the Falcons, and I would much rather roll out Chris Olave. I think the floor is a lot safer. Ceiling might not be as high, but I got to roll Olave here, guys. How do you feel about it?
I'm rolling out Olave. No question. I like the matchup better.
Yeah, I'm probably going with Olave, but I will say the Falcons on the season are the 5th best matchup for wide receivers, but over their last 5 games, they are the 3rd toughest. So, I mean, take what you want with trends and that sort of thing. I mean, it's opponent adjusted, so it's not necessarily based on just facing terrible opponents, but they've been a lot better against receivers lately than they have on the season.
Well, the thing is,
go ahead.
The thing is that Olave is going to get all of the wide receiver points in this.
Well,
game.
That's what I mean. That's my only reason it's not a slam dunk for Olave. Is the matchup I don't think is as good as it looks. I still think it's decent though. It's divisional, and I'm still going with Olave.
Michael saying, thank you guys. Love you guys all the way from, I can't pronounce that town, Michigan. Thank you. Michael, we appreciate you, man, for tuning in. We hope you subscribe to the channel. Come back, hang out with us again. We're here to help you, not just this season, but every season with your fantasy football advice. And here we have another new face in the chat, I believe, Rainer Allen. I hope I pronounced this right. He's kind of throwing out his team here, asking who he should start and who he should sit. He's also asking, should he make any trades? No trade deadline for him. I guess we need to know, if you're still here with us, Rainer, how many players do you need to start? Is it a 2 wide receiver, a 2 flex league, 1 flex? That would kind of help us here. He's got Deshaun, Saquon, K9 is in Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
No,
K9 is his nickname. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Because his number's 8, right? Is he number 8?
No.
Okay, he's 9. Okay. Garrett Wilson.
Come on, Seth.
Kelsey, Rashad White, Gabe Davis, AJ Dillon, Algier, Burks, DJ Chark, and Madison here for him. Let's see. We got some new comments. 1 flex, full PPR. Thanks, guys. He's saying. So
we're gonna go 1, 2, 2, 1, and a flex.
Who is Salon? He's saying Salon in this? Is that
Deshaun Watson?
I think it's supposed to be
okay.
Watson. Yeah.
So you're definitely rolling out Saquon and Kenneth Walker if healthy. 100%.
Yes.
No disputing that. Olave's a must start, I think. Kelsey, you're obviously starting. Wilson's I think you're starting. I think it would come down to your flex, in my opinion, between DJ Chark and Rashad White. We talked about Gabe Davis earlier in the show. He's very, very boom bust, so it's hard to trust him. I'm probably rolling out Rashad White here in the flex. Scott, any digression here from what I've kind of laid out?
No, there? Those are the play. I mean, if that's the slots we're filling, that's where I would go. And it would also for me come down to Rashad White and DJ Chark, even though AJ Dillon finally had kind of a good game before the bye. Yeah, but I'm still going with Rashad White.
He's just been so consistent. And if there are any moves that Rainer wants to do here, Nate, the biggest hole I'm seeing is, can he flip some of these bench guys like a Burks or an Algier or a Dillon for a better quarterback? Because I don't trust Deshaun Watson as my QB1. No way.
I mean, it's a 1 QB league. So, yeah, I mean, Goff's probably out there. I bet you he's not rostered. Or I bet you he might not even – or go get Brock Purdy off waivers.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you need to really – but if you are going to move somebody, I'd move Algier probably and Dillon.
Okay. Maybe try to capitalize off that big game recently from AJ Dillon is what Nate's saying.
I might try and package, depending on whether it's keeper or not, if it's just regular redraft. I might try and package like Dylan and Burks if Burks is going to be healthy for an upgrade
that's a good
somewhere
one,
else.
too. That's a good one too.
This is a really good. This is a really solid lineup, man. If you can get like a wide receiver 1, I think you have 2 wide receiver 2s in there. That'd be great. Try to upgrade there. Try to upgrade at quarterback. But other than that, like your RBs are solid. Your flex options are solid. Travis Kelce, huge boost to you. So I really like this team, man. If you have any more questions, Rainer, please let us know. We're always available here on YouTube as well on Twitter. Hope you're subscribed to the channel. Come back and hang out with us again, man. Really, really interesting team there. Good luck to you in the playoffs, my guy. Here we have, okay, so I just want to round us out here. My weekly advice. I want to talk about a little bit of story, kind of like your guys' it revolves around high school sports. So my senior year of high school, basically the goal was to get to regionals for me. I never made it out of the district tournament. I had to be top 4 in the district. Early in my high school wrestling career, I wasn't a great wrestler, honestly. I kind of came back and really worked hard at it. Never worked so hard at something in my life up to that point. So, I was really, really sad when I made it to what they call the heartbreak rounds. And I went up against a kid that I knew he had beat me before this year. I beat him the year before, but he threw headlocks. And I said, Seth, just stay away from the headlock because the kid was a lot stronger than me. I thought I had better technique than him. If I could wrestle the full 6 minutes, I win. But if I get thrown in a headlock, I lose. Said, stay up out of the tie. The kid, I get in on a shot right away. The kid sprawls out. We go out of bounds. I do it again. Kind of like hits me in the face a little bit. I kind of got a little like peeved off at him. He beats me into the tie. I walk right into the headlock. I get headlocked. Saw lights for my last high school wrestling match. I saw lights. 1 match away from my goal. I was ranked in the district. I've never been ranked in the district before. Had a winning record, really happy with the season. But I was devastated, boys. I was devastated. And I was in the locker room, honestly, just sulking afterwards. My older brother comes in. And my older brother, he doesn't have a lot of great quotes throughout my lifetime that I can honestly remember. And this was probably the best ever. He said, Seth, it's okay to fall short in high school sports. Fall short of your goals in high school sports. But don't fall short of your goals in life. And that really stuck to me, and I think we can apply that to fantasy football leagues as well moving forward here, guys. It's okay to fall short of your goals. If that's a championship, if that's playoffs and you miss playoff, it's okay to fall short. Just make sure in life that you're doing everything you can to strive to not only reach your goals, but help other people reach their goals and just be a good person. So I wanted to share that story that my brother, instilled some life advice. Well, that was like 7, 8 years ago at this point. I'll never forget it. So I want to thank Austin for that. Want to thank the audience tonight, guys. It was great hearing from so many new faces, so many familiar faces. So I greatly appreciate all that, guys. Any final thoughts here, guys? Because I am ready to absolutely send it into week number 15 here, boys.
If you've never had a pedicure before, go get one. I get one tomorrow, finally. It's been like 2 months and I'm excited. They're great, guys.
Scott,
don't be afraid.
You rock petties, Scott?
I've never experienced one. No.
They massage your feet.
Oh, I know what it is. I just have never experienced.
I honestly didn't know the difference between a manicure and a pedicure. So I appreciate you pointing that out for me. Guys, Nate and I will be back on Friday. We do a Tuesday and a Friday show during the season. So bring your start sit and some more trade questions on Friday afternoon. We have some really great guests lined up for you. Until then, guys, keep it in between and good luck on Thursday Night Football, y'all. Peace.
Your destination for both some feel-good lifestyle advice and some fantasy football advice.